Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing Facebook Live. We're back. We're back from England and Ireland and Scotland. We're back in the garden. Mid-August. One of the stars of the August garden, and certainly a plant we would never be without. Phlox paniculatas. Full bloom right now for most varieties. We'll talk about that in a minute. One of the best perennials for this late summer time in the garden. There's so many varieties, so many great colors, all the way from pure whites through every shade of pinks, magentas, purples, even some orangey reds. You really can't be without Phlox paniculata at this time of the year. Now, Phlox paniculata, Eastern North American native, not native to Ontario, but native to sort of the East Coast and the Eastern United States. So it gets close to that native plant status. They really are great. Lots of different heights available. And for me, I really like the tall summer phlox, and we'll look at a couple of examples as we are in the corner here. We have this mass of phlox here, and if Laura comes around the corner a little bit, so you can sort of get a vision of what this little area has been allowed to do. Really quite a range. Now, this is Phlox Miss Jill. It's one we've had in the garden for a very, very long time. It's an extremely good cultivar. If you look down the stems here, you'll see that there is none of the biggest problem with Phlox paniculata, and that's powdery mildew. If you've got older varieties that are very prone to powdery mildew, best advice is to just get rid of them. Look at some better cultivars. There's lots of great cultivars out there that are powdery mildew resistant. Miss Jill is one of them. Look into that mix. There's not a speck of powdery mildew in those at all. And these are very densely planted. So look for that when you're looking for Phlox paniculatas. Also watch your heights. Miss Jill here, she's getting close to 5 feet tall. There are great varieties anywhere from sort of 3 feet up to about 6 feet. Watch your bloom times. We have bloom times from late July right up to one variety called Tracy's Treasure that we don't even see start blooming until mid-September. It's really a fantastic one. When it comes into bloom later on in the season, we'll have a look at it because it is a great light pink for late summer. I love the tall, big phlox. I love them as backgrounds. I love them as mass plantings. One interesting thing about the Phlox paniculatas that I want to show you is that when you see them blooming and you see a head that's, hang on a second here, you stop digging, you, and you see a head here that looks like it's starting to finish blooming, don't just deadhead this flower, because what'll happen is it'll produce a whole second crop of buds out of that flower head, and that's something to be ready for. When you've got phlox that are sort of finishing, just go through, just give them a shake, take off some of those bad spent flowers, and allow them to rebloom out of the same head. One thing that you shouldn't do with Phlox paniculata, and it may or may not happen in all gardens, but it can reseed. With Phlox paniculata, you're dealing with cultivars mostly, so they've been cross-pollinated and things to develop the colors you're seeing. So what can happen when a variety starts to reseed is that you can get variation. Now, if you don't mind it, let it go. But I'm going to show you what I mean. So this is Phlox Miss Jill, and it's been allowed to grow here for quite a few years. A number of years ago, a seedling came up beside it, this one right here. This one I think is probably one of the best phlox we have in the garden. And it's a seedling of Miss Jill. It's tall, it's got good sized flower heads, big flowers. Pretty good fragrance. So I've allowed it to stay. But if you come around this way, I'm going to show you what can happen with your cultivars if you don't cull out the seedlings and deadhead. This pink one here, this white one with no eye, this pink with the white center, these kind of purplish ones, this big pink back here, these are all seedlings of Miss Jill. So you need to be aware of that and be prepared to cull out seedlings or allow a seedling to bloom. If it's mildew free and you like it, nothing wrong with keeping it, but be aware of that problem. So Phlox paniculatas, we always let them bloom, clean them up, let them rebloom, and then we deadhead so we don't get a lot of spray around. I'm just going to show you this tall one here at the moment. This very tall one with these very small flowers, but you can see what's going to be very large heads. This is Phlox paniculata Gina. This is the 2024 Perennial Association Perennial Plant of the Year for next year. It really is a fantastic one. It's interesting that the height is usually listed at 5 feet. Ours gets clearly 6.5 feet tall. But it's a wonderful variety. It was selected out of the wild. So if you're into more natives without cultivars, this was a selection from the wild. It's great fragrance, and butterflies love this one. It's more than other varieties. So watch for Phlox paniculata Gina. I'm just going to wrap around. I'm going to show you just one other big guy here. I'm going to go through the garden. So here you can see a bit of the height variation. This is Phlox paniculata Little Boy. You can see he tops out around 3 to 4 feet. A little bit earlier blooming than some, as we're already sort of finishing our first crop of bloom and on to sort of our secondary bloom before we deadhead. But it's a nice tidy one. Pretty mildew free. Doesn't look too bad. But we're still here with one of the best ones. This cultivar's been available for a while. It was a Perennial Plant of the Year selection a number of years ago. This is Phlox David. Very tall, extremely fragrant, mildew-free, an excellent variety. So watch for David if you're looking for good mildew-resistant varieties. It really is the best, or one of the best. It's an excellent plant. It is quite tall, but it's a great background, a great show at this time of the year. Now I'm going to share with you a little trick that you can do with the big phlox if you want. If you want to keep them a little shorter, when they're growing, you do that Chelsea chop that you hear about, and we've talked about it a little bit. When they get about this tall, chop them in half. That cuts down the height and allows to produce more flowers on shorter plants. So you can control their height that way. Also with phlox, there's been a lot of phlox hybridizing going on. There's a lot of new varieties out there. They look a lot like Phlox paniculata, but there are a few different species mixed in there. Phlox maculata, Phlox pilosa, a few different ones. And they're generally earlier blooming. So if you like the look of Phlox paniculatas and phlox, you can get these now in the garden from about early June right through till September by selectively picking the varieties and cultivars. So that's just a little blurb. One of my favorite summer perennials. We have any questions today, Laura? All right. Well, a couple of things. We missed a few of our last days of posting on Instagram and Facebook. We were having some technical issues, but I'll catch you up on the last few days of our trip, and we will be posting very, very shortly details on next year's trips. Late May, Chelsea Flower Show, August, the Highlands of Scotland. So stay tuned for those. And we'll see you next time on Let's Get Growing Facebook Live.